tune now for Westchester Eye on the Radio with Peter Moses and John Sharan on 1460 WVOX.
Welcome to Westchester Eye on the Radio, our weekly discussion of issues relating to Westchester and the surrounding area. I'm John Sharan, and today my co-host is Ardina Seward, and we have a special in-studio guest. Ardina arranged it, and I will give her the honor of introducing him.
Well, we have a great guest today, folks. His name is Andrew Kronichfeld, a.k.a. Andrew Chowder. Now, I have to confess, when I announced last week he was going to be on the program, I referred to him as Andrew Chowder, but he corrected me. He says that's only the name that my friends know me by. I am Andrew Kronichfeld. So Andrew is here today. Andrew has written 2.5 books. He also is a runner. He is a musician, and he is in the middle of a fundraiser for mesothelioma. I don't even know where to begin. So we'll just start with Andrew. Where would you like to start? Do you want to start with your books?
I think we should start with the fundraiser, if we could.
Sure, go ahead.
All right, so I guess to give a little background, my mother, Karen, who's the subject of my first book, had leukemia for about 8 years, and she passed away in 2010. And then more recently, my father, Henry, also known as Hank, he was diagnosed, I'm not exactly sure, but I think around April of 2015 with mesothelioma.
That's a fatal lung cancer, isn't it?
Yep, it's a type of cancer you only get from being exposed to asbestos. And I mean, it was really tough. He fought very valiantly, and I mean, he just went through so many different procedures in such a short amount of time. But you know, it's inspired me, and that's why I'm doing this fundraiser, because you know, Memorial Sloan Kettering they've literally saved my life twice now, in 2010 and again last year, and you know, they were treating my father. So basically all the money I raise will benefit mesothelioma research at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center.
And what is the fundraiser? Where is it going to be? What's it all about?
So I just sort of made it up. It's called 5 Miles to Fight Mesothelioma. Mm-hmm. I'll be running the Rye Derby on April 30th in my hometown of Rye. So I have a lot of great support in the community from local businesses and friends and old teachers. So I just thought that would be a good place to do it. And for me, it's a challenge. You know, I've started training again, but I figured running 5 miles would be a challenge for me. So it'd be good for me to work towards that goal while simultaneously working towards the goal of raising the $5,000 to benefit Sloan Kettering Cancer Center.
So you're looking for sponsorships?
Yeah, I actually have a few in my hometown. I work for a great place called Jerry's Post Road Market, and then Kelly Sea Level, which is a pretty famous local bar/restaurant. And then a good friend of mine, Tyler's dad, owns a place called Carpet Trends. So we have 3 as of now.
And if they want to get in touch with you and sponsor you, how can they do that?
They could look through my website, which is andrewkronichfeld.com.
How do you spell Kronichfeld?
Good question. It's K as in Kilo, R-A, N as in Nancy, I-C-H, F as in Frank, E-L-D. And I could probably email you guys a link to it. Maybe you could put it on social media or the website.
Now, your running assignment here, your challenge here that you're going out, this is all part of an event that's already scheduled?
Yeah, so the local YMCA, the Rye YMCA, does this as, I believe, for a fundraiser for their own services, their own programs. They're a great facility, too. I know one of their things is anyone who's a resident of Rye who's a cancer survivor, I believe they let them join for free or do certain programs there for free, which is great. I'm just doing my own fundraiser it's more about the race. So, And I have a few friends that are going to run with me, and then another local business in Westchester called Shoreline is going to help us make some custom apparel, like T-shirts that have 5 miles from Miso and things like that on them.
We'll mention that towards the end of the program, so anybody who's interested and didn't jot it down the last time, they'll be able to get more information later in the program.
Okay, great.
Now, Andrew, as a person who is not sighted, what do you hear when you're running? I think we're going into a break, so we may have to have an answer to that after we come out of the break. So stay with us, folks, and we'll be right back after this message. We are back live. This is Ardina with John the Man Charan. Peter Moses is off today, and our studio guest, Andrew Cranigfeld, a.k.a. Andrew Chowder. Now, Andrew, we were talking earlier, or about to talk earlier, about what you hear when you are running, since you are not sighted. And I think a lot of people aren't aware of that, and they would like to know what exactly, what do you hear? What are your sensations when you're running?
Well, I think I'll back it up just a little and mention that I don't run by myself. I always have a guide who's helping me go where I need to go. Usually that involves a tether, which when I run, I usually have about a 4 or 5 foot length of rope tied into a loop, so that if you can picture it, my guide is running parallel to me about 2 feet to my left, 2-3 feet to my left, and she'll give me information. One thing I find helps a lot when my guides give me sort of more regular updates, because one thing when you're running blind is you can sort of feel like you're not making as much progress as someone who's sighted. So when my guide says, "Oh, now we're going by the museum at Van Cortlandt, now we're going by the cow path, now we're getting off the track," these things sort of help me feel like I'm moving along. And, I'm always, constantly using my ears and my nose. There's one part of the park that is a dog run, so you can sort of smell when you're in the area of that. And then, and then I'm always listening, because as you approach the north part of the Van Cortlandt Flats, you're near the Sawmill Parkway, so then you can actually hear the traffic of the cars zooming up and down the Sawmill Parkway.
Mm-hmm.
And we have, we're not the only ones here with questions. We have a caller on the line.
Oh, great.
Hello?
Hello?
Yes, caller, why don't you...
Hello, is this Ardina and Chowder?
Yes, it's Ardina and Chowder, and this sounds like my daughter.
Yep.
Yes, it is.
Well, KK, one of a million questions.
How's it going?
I'm doing well. How's it going, guys? You guys sound great. Mom, congratulations on your show.
Thank you. It's not my show. I'm the subordinate to John Charan and Peter Moses.
Well, thank you for taking good care of my mom. You guys must have Zen-like patience.
She's a good learner.
The reports are still the reports are still coming in. I just hope that it's. I think John runs a pass-fail kind of system.
Yeah.
So far, I mean, he's.
You haven't failed yet.
I haven't failed yet.
Seems like it's going well to me.
Now, you had a question for our guest.
Yes, Andrew Chowder. What is it like going to see live music? Can you explain that to me a little bit, how your process is going out?
It's a little bit of an adventure. I need help getting around the venue usually, and at times the music can be too loud. But I do enjoy it when I get to do it. I've been lucky that I have friends that like to go see live music, and I do it whenever I can.
And this is...
That's great.
I was going to say, this is your actually as a member of the audience, not a participant. Correct?
Oh, yes, as a member of the audience.
Okay.
Yeah, I like a lot of music. One thing my parents really, got me into is sort of good old classic rock and folk. Growing up, I had our front closet where most people would keep their silverware and fancy china. We had four shelves full of records, Eric Clapton and Cream and the Beatles and Neil Young. And I remember just putting them on and dancing around the living room to,
Well, just last week, John Fogerty of Creedence Clearwater Revival was up at the Palace in Portchester. So don't know if you were able to get to it, but that's as classic rock as you can get.
Yep, the Capitol.
Capitol.
Yep. I've been there several times.
Mm-hmm.
They have the guy from the Moody Blues plays there sometimes.
That's right.
And yep. So I was lucky that my parents got me into a lot of good old music, and those bands, as you mentioned, the Capitol Theater in Portchester, they're having a great resurgence right now.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of fans in my generation that like to go see them.
And caller, any other questions for our guest?
No, that was it. I just want to wish you guys luck, and I'm proud of both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'll buy you pizza later. All right. So we are still on the air, and we are with Andrew Cranigfeld. Now, we haven't talked about your books, the books that you've written. So not only are you an athlete, but you also have written books, children's books, a lot having to do with family members.
Yeah. So the first one, Karen's Garden, it's meant for pretty young children, pre-kindergarten to about second grade. And basically it's a very simple, short, true story about my mother and how she, shared her garden with her friends and her family and would give her tomatoes out to local pizza parlor, which in this case was Sunrise Pizza in Rye. And then they in exchange gave me free pizza. And the kids always love hearing that part.
Mm-hmm.
But, I think there's an important message in the book that a lot of children today and adults aren't really connected with nature. Gardening is a way you're digging around the dirt, you're nurturing the plants to grow. It's really a good. I've actually read research that they found that soldiers with post-traumatic stress disorder, gardening really helps them because you're doing work, but it's relaxing. You're outdoors. You're getting fresh air. So when I visit schools to talk about my story in the books, I always say there's all these different benefits to gardening, and I try to let the kids know why they should garden.
What is the what is the easiest plant to grow if a parent wants to get their child started in gardening?
That's a great question. I've heard a lot of people say that mint, the herb mint, is like a weed and you can't make it not grow. But I do remember when I was young, they would grow in class those little pea pods because I think those were good. You just plant them in one of those little 6-ounce Solo cups and water them, and the kids can sort of quickly see the results of watering, getting sunlight on the pea plant. So that's a good one to have the young kids do.
Well, we're speaking with Andrew Cranigfeld, an author, a runner, a resident of Rye, and he's got some interesting stories to tell. You're listening to Westchester Eye on the Radio here on WVOX, 1460 AM and heard worldwide at WVOX.com. I'm John Charan along with Ardina Seward. We'll be back after a brief news break, so stay tuned. Welcome back to Westchester Eye on the Radio, our weekly discussion of issues relating to Westchester and the surrounding area. I'm John Charan along with Ardina Seward, and today our in-studio guest, Andrew Cranigfeld, a runner and author, and somebody who's had some interesting challenges in his life. And one of the things I wanted to get to before we got a little too serious is you have a popular nickname throughout Westchester known as Andrew Chowder. Where does Andrew Chowder come from?
Actually, it's just Chowder, but it comes from basically, I have two older brothers, Bram and Oliver. And when we were young, I guess when I was first born, they were sort of jealous of the new kid in town, my mom giving me most of her affection. So they started calling me a bad name, I think. I'm not even sure exactly what it is, but something you wouldn't want your children calling their sibling. And then so my mom and grandmother bribed them with pound puppies, which, if you can't remember, were like these cute little stuffed animal dogs in the early to mid 1980s. Mm-hmm. And then I think Chowder came. My mother, when I was a young baby, an infant, I had one of those birthmarks on my head that would look. I was very pale, and I had like this splotch birthmark on my head, and I was a little overweight. So she's like, he kind of looks like a sack of potatoes. So let's call him Chowder. And then it was funny because when I was young, only my family called me that. And then my brother's friends, so like they're both older than me, began calling me that. And then when I was probably about middle school age, like 13 or so, my friends heard my family calling me that. And then they all started calling me Chowder. And then it really got bad because when I was in high school, my hockey coach began calling me Chowder. And when I scored, I didn't score a lot. I was more of a goon on the ice. But when I did score a goal or have an assist in the newspaper, the Journal News, it would say Rye goals Chowder, no last name. So I thought that was pretty funny, but shocking at the same time.
Now, we talked about one of the books that you've written. Tell us about the other one that you've done.
Okay, yeah. So the newer book, my second book, is called Oliver Saves the Nature Center. And basically, I wanted this book to have several different elements, but be very educational. It's about environmentalism, ecology. And when I was growing up, they had this thing called Scholastic News.
Sure. And
a Weekly Reader. So I tried to, some of the elements of those, they had things for kids that were like crossword puzzles, I Spies, word jumbles. So in the back of my book, Oliver Saves the Nature Center, there's all these puzzles and word games and a glossary. And then I had my illustrator, the wonderful Sally Tobin, hide a leprechaun in all of the illustrations. So while the kids are reading it, there's all these activities that come along with it. But the basic plot of the book is that my real-life brother, Oliver, who actually was an environmental educator at the Rye Nature Center, is working, and one day a talking turtle named Oscar comes out of the bushes and says, "Are you the one sent to help us animals?" And he's like, am I dreaming? Is this really happening? And basically Oscar takes him on a tour around town to show him some things that are affecting the environment negatively, like overdevelopment, dumping things, using disposable products. So basically, in the first part of the book, Oliver is learning all of these different problems. And the second part of the book takes place on Earth Day, April 22nd. And he gets a bunch of volunteers who actually in the book are my real life friends and me. And we sort of go around, and as we're learning about the problems, we're learning how to fix the problems. So basically my idea is it's sort of like a magic school bus in a way. The reader can learn all this stuff about the environment while, having a little bit of humor injected by the talking animals. In the second part, there's a talking pug named Lila who's sort of very rambunctious and just totally in there for comic relief. And so I was hoping, while these kids are learning, they're also laughing and having a good time. Now,
Ardina mentioned that you've also done half a book. Does that mean that you co-authored something or that it's not finished yet?
It's a work in progress, right?
That means it's not finished yet. Yeah, I've been throwing ideas around about my father, Henry, who's the reason I'm doing the fundraiser in April. He had some very, I would say, unique hobbies. So the book is Henry's Hobbies. And some of them were he was a beekeeper. He kept bees at our house in our yard. He had a bread baking machine. He turned one of our 1.5 bathrooms into a dark room for black and white photography, and then
doesn't everybody?
And then when my mother threw him out, he turned the garage into a black and white photography, to develop photos. And he also was really into sailing and canoeing and camping. And, I think those, just as, with Karen's Garden, I said it's important for this new generation to be into some more outdoor activities and things. He loved camping and canoeing. And when my brothers and my whole family and I would go on these trips to the Allagash River in northern Maine, which, it's incredible. There's nobody around, no light pollution. When you look up at the sky at night, you can see about 10 billion stars. And, it's just really being out in the middle of wilderness. It makes you respect nature and the environment. And I'm hoping, like the books, if people go out and experience nature like this, they're going to care about it more.
Did your appreciation for nature, was that the inspiration for you to start being an author?
That was part of it. I think my mother was very creative, and the first book, Karen's Garden, it started as a tribute email I was writing to my family. And around the same time I had written it, my father's friend Keith is like, I've actually written some children's books. You can do self-publishing. So I asked him several questions and started doing research. And then, I would say several months later, Karen's Garden was finished.
Now, I know you said that you have lectured at schools to children. What have been some of the questions that the kids have asked you regarding the book?
Oh, that's a great question. So the kids, they don't always ask me questions about the book. Sometimes it can be from the most mundane question of how do you tie your shoes. Sometimes the younger kids get obsessed with things like how do you brush your hair, how do you brush your teeth, even though it's the same as a sighted person. But, once in a while, a kid will ask a great question such as, do you see in your dreams? And, for me, a 7-year-old thinking of that it's pretty deep. And the answer is yes, I do see in my dreams. So,
do you think it's benefited you to have been sighted until 2010? It gives you a perspective as to what the world may be?
Yeah, people ask me that question also. I definitely think it helps in a lot of ways. One way is that because I know what colors are, I've seen colors, I've seen shapes. Even in a day-to-day basis, someone could say, "Oh, there's a red car, there's a yellow, sunflower." That's something my brain can remember what those colors look like.
Well, we're speaking with Andrew Kronichfeld, author, runner, person dealing with blindness here on WVOX 1460 AM and heard worldwide at WVOX.com. You're listening to Westchester Eye on the Radio. I'm John Charan along with Ardina Seward. We'll be back with Andrew right after a brief news break, so stay tuned.
Back live with John the Man Charan, myself, Ardina, and our in-studio guest, Andrew Kronichfeld, otherwise known as Andrew Chowder. And we were talking during the break. Years ago, I covered a blind golfers tournament in Waikagill. Never having done it before, it was a mystery to me as to how a blind person can golf. And I actually saw a blind man hit a hole-in-one. I was astounded. And I went up to him and I said, dude, how did you do that? How did you do a hole-in-one and you can't see the ball? So he looked at me and he says, sometimes I just forget that I'm blind. And that is kind of an allegory to life, but it is also, it's how it's how to overcome. And speaking of that, Andrew, what can you tell the audience about adaptive technology for blind people? What's new?
Well, what's new? I just really wanted to go back to, you were talking about golf. I was blown away but that people who are blind run triathlons. And actually, one of my first guides for running was Miss Heidi Chatwick, and she told me that she's guided people who.
That's your adaptive technology talking.
Speaking of adaptive technology, I apologize. My phone is yelling at me. So, so adaptive technology. My cell phone is a regular iPhone, but there's a software on every iPhone, even if you don't know it's there, called VoiceOver. And basically, it's what's called it's a type of screen reader. So just imagine as you were to touch the screen, wherever your finger would be read aloud. So it would say something like phone, email, messages, notes, and then, that's, to me, that technology makes all of these different parts of life accessible for blind people. And one thing I always think about, because people are like, oh, it must be so hard. How are you blind? And I always say, well, I can use Facebook. I can send emails. I can watch Netflix. Imagine what it was like for a blind person 100 years ago, before this stuff existed.
So what kind of devices do you use besides a phone?
Well, most of my cousin was actually born blind. So I heard that, even just 20 years ago, for all of these different functions, there was a different device. So if you wanted to check the denomination of a bill of money, you'd have one device for that. If you wanted to check the color of your shirt, you'd have another device for that. If you wanted to have something read for you, there was sort of this giant microscope-looking device that would help you read. But now they have all of these things as applications on smartphones. Mm-hmm. So on the iPhone in my pocket, I can take it out. I can go to this application called Money Reader, and I'll hold a bill, and it will say $20. Or I'll hold it to my shirt, and it will say, gray. And, these things are really amazing, and they really help people to be more independent. And they also have applications they're called, one's called Voice Stream, and how that works is you can put text into it, any text, and it'll read it to you. And what I always tell the students when I visit schools is that even though I'm blind, someone might be dyslexic, someone might have low vision, someone, there are other reasons why someone might need to have their text read to them other than just being blind. So, this adaptive technology helps the deaf, helps the blind, helps people with learning disabilities, people with dyslexia. So it's really amazing what they're doing and how many people it helps on a daily basis.
Andrew, how did you lose your sight?
That's a great question. I had a brain tumor called a germinoma, and the first hospital I went to, I won't mention their name, but in April of 2010, they misdiagnosed the brain tumor. The first time they thought I had a lymphoma, and they gave me chemotherapy, and then the tumor got bigger, and then they thought it was what's called a hypophysitis, which is a pituitary problem. And the treatment for that was intravenous steroids. So I was getting something like 500 milligrams of steroids in my intravenous a day. And I don't know if any of you know about steroids, but they make you ravenously hungry. I mean, I put on 90 pounds in 6 weeks.
Wow.
So I was putting on 2 pounds a day plus. And that basically, that was the toughest time of my life. My mom had just passed away literally 3 weeks before I found out I was sick. And my girlfriend at the time, Rhea, was great. Her whole family, my brothers, my father, everyone was there to support me. And then the best decision I ever made, and with the help of all the people around me, was to transfer to Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. And I went there in early August of 2010. Mm-hmm. They did another surgery. They got the correct diagnosis, which was a germinoma. And after about 25 days of radiation over the next, I'd say, 8 to 12 weeks, my tumor was completely gone. It's been completely gone since then. So that's, for this fundraiser I'm doing, that's the other reason. Sloan Kettering saved my life. They extended my father's life. And I always tell anyone who gets cancer, go to Memorial Sloan Kettering, because that's all they do is treat cancer. So they're the best,
And since you've mentioned it, why don't you give the details about your website and the event itself? And also, I understand that April 22nd, in addition, there's a separate fundraiser. So why don't you go through the dates, the locations, and where they can contact you?
Okay, great. Yeah, so my website's just www.andrewchronicfeld.com, and Chronicfeld is KRANICHFELD. You can also Google me, and I'm sure my website and Facebook will come up. The race I'm running is on April 30th in Rye, New York. And as of right now, the business is sponsoring me. One is actually, I do social media Monday through Friday for a wonderful deli called Jerry's Post Road Market in Rye. Mm-hmm. And what they're going to do, they're going to give direct money directly to Sloan through my giving page. And then they're also going to have the weekend before the race, which is the weekend of Earth Day, the 22nd, they're going to be doing a promotion where I think every donut they sell, they're going to give $1 to the fundraiser. I know donut sounds like a strange one with the race and with cancer, but
everybody loves donuts, Andrew.
Donuts.
Not only does everyone love them, but they specifically told me that's, they sell very well. So they have really good donuts there. And then Mary, so she's my boss, Mary Slater, her sister, Kelly, manages a bar and restaurant in Rye called Kelly Sea Level, which was actually on the show Billionaires on HBO, or Showtime rather. And they're working with a vendor to figure out, some sort of promotion that will work. And then a family, the whole family I'm friends with, the Rogers, they own a great business called Carpet Trends. And they're going to have a sale that weekend where they're going to give a percentage of, proceeds to the fundraiser. And actually, one of my best friends, Dylan, who might be listening, works for them, and he's going to run with me, I think, in the race. So.
And people can get your books also on Amazon.com, correct?
Yeah, the books are pretty, you could just Google Karen's Garden or Oliver Saves the Nature Center, but you can get them both through Amazon. Oliver's is also on Barnes & Noble. It's available on Kindle. It's available on the Nook. And then I think you can ask your local bookstore and they can order it. So.
And what's ahead for Andrew Chronicfeld?
Things are looking good. I'll tell you, it's so good. When you're that close to death as I've been twice, it really makes you understand the value and just enjoying every day. People are like, how do you run? I just love getting out there now and running. It makes you feel alive. And I just pity the days in the past that I wasted. And now I'm just looking forward to the future.
Wow. Amen to that, brother.
Absolutely. You've been listening to Westchester Eye on the Radio here on WVOX 1460 AM and heard worldwide at WVOX.com. I'm John Charan, along with Ardina Seward, and our special in-studio guest today, Andrew Chronicfeld. Remember, his website is andrewchronicfeld.com, and he'll be participating in 5 miles to fight mesothelioma on Sunday, April 30th in Rye, New York, with a separate fundraiser on April 22nd. You can find out more details at his website. Until next week, I hope everyone has a great week. I hope that we enjoy the 70-degree weather on Wednesday, because it looks like we're only going to be 38 on Friday. But hopefully it bounces back next week. Take care, everybody.